Dan is anchoring special coverage on WNYC.org. Hey, Dan.
Hey.
How's it going?
Pretty well. So before the questions even got started today, we got some new information out of this hearing, Brian. Andy Pettit, that's Clemens' former teammate and someone who Clemens just said he is still friends with and will always be friends with. Pettit told Congress behind closed doors earlier this week that he and Clemens talked about human growth hormone. Pettit also acknowledged his own use of HGH, and he told Congress that he used even more HGH than was listed in the Mitchell report. And Brian McNamee's also been going back and looking at his notes. He's been thinking about it over the last 2 months, and he realizes that he actually gave Pettit and Chuck Knobloch more HGH than he had initially told investigators.
So that's interesting. Pettit is voluntarily acknowledging more use of these substances than the Mitchell report ever even came out with.
Yeah, and here's what he said. This is according to Chairman Henry Waxman of the committee. He said that he read from Pettit's affidavit, and Pettit said he was telling the truth because at some point he'll need to account to God. And Henry Waxman called Pettit a role model. Now, in questioning Clemens...
And he is known as a religious man.
Yes,
he's very
he is.
actively outspoken about his religion.
Yes, he is. Now, in questioning, Clemens wouldn't call his friend a liar. He just said that Pettit must have misheard or misremembered their conversations. He says at one point he and Pettit did talk about a TV show that they saw about old men whose lives were improved by taking human growth hormone.
So Pettit says he discussed human growth hormone with Roger Clemens. He doesn't say he knows Clemens did it.
He recalls a conversation where they talked about human growth hormone. There were two separate conversations. I don't have my dates right. But in the second conversation, Clemens and he were talking, and Clemens said, no, that was Debbie. Debbie's Clemens' wife. And right now the questioning, as I just left the hearing, that is what they're discussing, is Debbie Clemens' use of human growth hormone. And Congressman John Tierney of Massachusetts thought that he had caught Clemens in an inconsistency. In Clemens' deposition that he gave earlier this week, he said 3 times that he never talked to Brian McNamee about human growth hormone. But then when he was asked specifically about his wife's use of HGH, he says he had a heated conversation with McNamee about human growth hormone. So Congressman Tierney thought that was a major inconsistency.
Possibly heading toward perjury, which we'll talk about later. But you brought a clip of Clemens this morning and of the trainer who says he injected Clemens with steroids, Brian McNamee.
Yes, why don't we start with Roger Clemens?
If I'm guilty of anything, it is of being too trusting of everyone, wanting to see the best in everyone, being too nice to everyone.
And Clemens,
if I'm considered to be ignorant of that, then so be it.
And Clemens went on from there to say that, how can, he said this before, how can I prove a negative? And he said, I can either be silent, and then people say, oh, he's being so silent, he must be guilty, or he can be as loud as he's been over the last 2 months, and people say, oh, he's protesting too much, he must be guilty. Now, here's the man who we haven't heard from over the last 2 months. This is Brian McNamee. We've heard a lot from Roger Clemens over the last 2 months. Here is his former trainer.
Make no mistake. When I told Senator Mitchell that I injected Andy Pettit with performance-enhancing drugs, I told the truth. Andy Pettit, who I know to be honest and decent, has since confirmed this. And make no mistake, when I told Senator Mitchell that I injected Chuck Knobloch with performance-enhancing drugs, I told the truth. Chuck Knobloch has also confirmed this as well. And make no mistake, when I told Senator Mitchell that I injected Roger Clemens with performance-enhancing drugs, I told the truth. I told the truth about steroids and human growth hormone. I injected those drugs into the body of Roger Clemens at his direction.
So it's he said, he said.
It's he said, and one of the other things that Brian McNamee said in his opening statements is that he never trusted Roger Clemens. He says that's why he held on to those syringes and the gauze that he just this week we heard about that may have Clemens' DNA and some human growth hormone or steroids on it. That's why he held on to it as sort of a, kept it in his closet, and he said he didn't give it to investigators right away because he still wanted to protect Roger a little bit. But then when the phone call was played, the secretly recorded phone call of Brian McNamee talking about his sick child, he says that was the end of it, and now they're no longer friends.
Kind of creepy. He held on to syringes and stuff for all these years, 6 years or whatever it is. All right, so on they go. In Congress, Brian McNamee and Roger Clemens, WNYC's Dan Blumberg, is anchoring coverage of the hearings on WNYC.org. Thanks a lot, Dan.
You're welcome.